My name's Mr. Smith. I'm English faculty leader, and this is a presentation that I do every year, looking at mnemonics and metacognition. And the first thing to say is those words sound extremely complex, but really it's not. And hopefully, I'll be giving you some simple strategies that you can share with your sons or daughters around how to move information into long-term memory. So mnemonics just a way we create shortcuts into memory, and often they're quite abstract actually, which is interesting, but I'll come to that later. And metacognition is simply being aware of your own thought process. So very simply, what works for one might not work for another, and if you're not trying out different ways of remembering things, you could possibly be missing out on something that would be really effective for you as a student. So the first slide here is obviously the title. I was speaking to my dad. He said that back in the day, people would tie knots on bits of string and put them around the finger, and they would remember to do things. So I don't know if you like place objects in some places to remind you to do things. And as you can see there's a picture of a guy who's tied knots in his hanky, and apparently that was another way of doing it. So I think possibly one of those knots is to remember to wear a shirt in public, but he's obviously not twigged on. Anyway, so here's some mnemonics that your children might recognise. English is an irregular language, and difficult to learn how to spell it because of all sorts of ways in which English has changed over hundreds of years. So this is for because if you said to a child who's learnt phonics, how do you spell it, and they probably have like B-I-C-O-Z or whatever. But yeah, so big elephants can always upset small elephants. So it's abstract. It's a very short story or something in a way, a simple spelling mnemonic. But despite being abstract, it's easy to remember. So there's lots of examples of this. So I before E except after C. It's not actually correct that, but it's got that element of rhyme and rhythm. I before E except after C, which allows us to remember things. And if you think about the way songs work, I think on the Apple Store now, I think that because people tend to buy within the first 6 to 9 seconds, music producers are putting the chorus right at the start of the song, and it'll tend to rhyme and it'll tend to repeat and it'll be rhythmic because they want to get it in your head as soon as possible, so you'll buy it. So these are ways in which our brains work universally across the world. Red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. Again, I'm sure there'll be geographers who'd argue that that's not the case, but the fact is we use these idiomatic phrases to remember things. I actually use this one, never eat shredded wheat, for northeast, southwest. So the relationship between points of the compass and breakfast cereal, the abstract connections are the things that allow us to recall the knowledge. And there's there are, if you think about it in terms of physics, Richard of York gave battle in vain, red, orange, yellow, the colours of the rainbow. So they're all over the place, mnemonics, and what we want to do is create our own, because I'm sort of talking as if you've got the knowledge in your head, and it's a way of indexing it for easy recall. So mnemonics, aid memoir, many varieties, but we know that rhyme and short phrases, particularly groups of 10 or less words, can work in short-term memory. You can do this interactively or not, but it's a bit of fun. So I'm just going to say some numbers out now, and you've just got to say them back. So hopefully I'll leave enough of a pause, but it's worth a try, is this? Okay, so here we go. So I'll say a number, and you say it back, and plus whoever's in the next room will think you've gone mad or something. Anyway, here we go. So 1. Well done, you remembered. Next one, 4, 7. 9, 6, 3. 3, 8, 5, 1. If you're doing all right so far. 7, 0, 1, 5, 8. 5, 1, 9, 2, 4, 0. 2, 9, 4 1 0 4 3. If you're keeping up, you're up to 7 digits, which is about the average. Let's see if you can remember this one. 8 2 5 7 9 8 1 2. Yeah, see how you did. The point is, we can generally remember between 7 and 10 things in our short-term memory, and that's the memory that's in constant use throughout our conscious lives. It's why we have things like 10-digit phone numbers. It's why, what was it, 07, not 12 in it, and then like number plates, things like that. So things that we might have to recall, so we witnessed an accident. Anything longer than that is something we need to move into longer term memory. Our short term memory is working memory, and the clue's in the title, isn't it? Working memory. It's constantly at work, so it's not really useful for getting ready for big long exams, and that's the point, isn't it? Is that often students think this idea of cramming, putting again the word with its connotations of cramming, shoving things in that there's no space for, because the working memory isn't for that. So it's about moving things into longer term. So here's some strategies then, which is probably what we want to hear. So simple revision, and I say this every year. In English, for example, our lit paper 2 is 2.25 hours long, for which they're generally writing for that long. Just as a physiological exercise, that's difficult. I'll mark 30 papers. It'll take me maybe 3 or 4 hours, for which I'm writing most of that time, and it can be painful, And these students, when they're doing that battery of exams across 10, 11 subjects, this kind of revision, just writing up notes, all right, it's an act of synthesis in that they're looking at the information and perhaps trying to summarize it. So writing up notes from lessons, writing out quotes in English, for example, or summarising concepts and case studies in geography, whatever they're doing, that act of synthesis is useful to move things into long-term memory, because anytime we repeat an act or go back over information, it moves further into medium and then long-term memory. But also it's developing that motor skill and strength. So that's just a tip. It's less related to mnemonics than just good practice. And this is key. So reading is not revision. Slightly different if you're doing literature and you're rereading a play, because by doing so you're learning the narrative structure, which is assessed. But reading notes it's your working memory again. If there's no act of synthesis, for example, your son or daughter saying, right, can you ask me what happens here? Being questioned, essentially tested. But if they're not doing anything with it, the information will dissipate and go. Within about 15 minutes, they reckon. So there you go. Reviewing what you know, trying to recall what you know, is retrieval practice. And what they've found is the harder it is to remember something, when you do finally remember it, it'll stick around for a long, long time. So that's why I talk about testing, asking questions, or even teaching someone about something, because it forces you to recall things that you know about it. But yeah, so here we go. Another little demonstration for you here. So a Long Island tea is extremely strong and therefore good cocktail. But I'm just going to flash up the ingredients and count to 10. Well, actually, probably 10 seconds, and just see if you can memorize it. So here we go. Right. Can you remember the ingredients? So just see if you can write them down. I'll give you a little bit of time. Okay, I'll flash up the answers to see how you did. So you've got vodka, gin, white rum, tequila, Cointreau, sugar syrup, cola. I would normally at this point ask who managed to get 7, and then how, because it's interesting. You've probably got what we'd call existing schema, or like approaches, ways of organising yourself metacognitively to memorise things. So some of you may have repeated it, stared at it, or categorised it, or looked at the capital letters or something. You've probably got an existing approach to memorising things, but you've got to remember often kids haven't. And this is what I meant at the beginning by metacognition is, well, let's show them some ways you could get that information in your head. And some of the ways I've said, like repetition over and over, or thinking of colours, or whatever, these are strategies they can try. And I know it's a cocktail recipe, but this could be, for example, if we were looking at A-level English language, pragmatics, phonology, grammar, lexis, semantics, discourse, a series of things of which there is then associated knowledge, but they could recall it in the order they need to. So let's have a look. It's all about what method's useful to you. So there's also categorization, but there's repetition, but there's also one called narrative, right? So I think, is it this one? Yeah. So you would take the initial letter and make a story. So I've not really planned this. Let me see if I can. So Victor goes willingly towards Canada sipping chocolate. Victor goes willingly towards Canada sipping chocolate. And you might think this is absolute nonsense. So I'll just move that away. Victor goes willingly towards Canada sipping chocolate. And then it's easy, it's odd, but you remember the story easier than you would a series of perhaps unrelated topics. And it's no different to the Richard of York gave battle in vain, but we've used it for our topic headings. So yeah, it's having the student try out a range of approaches, and if you can encourage them to do that, to test you, to teach you, to be tested on their work, and to try different ways of memorizing things, perhaps this abstract narrative style. And I tell you what, this is from an extract from a book. I think it's Soldier X. So it's the first book that MI5 have allowed to be published about its training and recruitment of operatives. And this is the strategy they're taught as he's going through selection at this point, and they're in a room, and there is a code word on the table which all the candidates go in and they see, so they're obviously aware they need to memorise it. And the code is Emily 168988047X, right at the top. And what he does here, if you look a bit further down the sort of bottom paragraph, 1 is a dagger, 6 is a golf club, and then he goes on, 9 is a meat hook, 0 is a cake. So he turns it into a very odd, abstract story. And what is it? Emily, a massive fat elephant with tiny ears, picks up a dagger and steals a golf club from a woman. And then, if you carry on reading the book, he's then kept for 30 minutes to allow short-term memory to dissipate, which is about 15 minutes. And then they have to repeat the code, and he passes. And so, my point is, if MI5 are using mnemonics in order to recall information, maybe we should too. Anyway, I hope that's been useful. The students will know where I am in the school, and please ask them if they want to come and clarify anything. My email address is stc@princehenrys.co.uk, stc@princehenrys.co.uk, if you have any queries about this presentation. Anyway, best of luck to your son or daughter, and thanks for your time.